Cowboy joked he'd marry the little Apache girl when she grew up. Years later, she returned to marry. The summer sun shone brightly over the small frontier town, casting golden light across the dusty streets and wooden buildings. Children ran and played along the boardwalks, while townsfolk went about their daily chores. The air carried a mix of scents: fresh bread from the bakery, the faint smoke of chimneys, and the earthy smell of horses that filled the stables. In the middle of all this bustle was Jack, a young cowboy in his late teens, known throughout the town for his easy smile, strong arms, and adventurous spirit. He spent most of his days helping at the general store, running errands, and riding his horse across the surrounding hills. Jack was always curious about the world and loved meeting new people, often exchanging stories and jokes with anyone he met. One quiet afternoon, while the sun hovered high in the sky, a small group of travelers entered the town. They were a family from a nearby Apache settlement, traveling to trade goods and restock supplies. Among them was a little girl with deep, shining eyes and long dark hair that fell in waves down her back. Her name was Leela. She carried herself with a confidence unusual for a child her age, yet there was a gentleness in her smile that could melt even the sternest hearts. Leela had grown up learning the traditions of her people, listening to stories told by her elders and understanding the ways of the land, but she was also fascinated by the stories she had heard of life outside her village. This curiosity had brought her into the town that day. Jack noticed her immediately. He was stacking goods on a shelf inside the general store when he heard the sound of small footsteps running across the wooden floor. Looking up, he saw Leela peeking shyly around the doorway, her eyes wide with wonder at all the new sights around her. She had never seen so many strange things at once: the colorful fabrics, shiny trinkets, and the curious faces of townsfolk bustling about. Jack couldn't help but chuckle at her expression. He stepped forward and greeted her with his usual friendly tone. "Well, hello there, you must be new in town." Leela nodded, a small smile forming on her face. She was usually quiet around strangers, but something about Jack made her feel safe. He wasn't intimidating like the other adults, and there was a warmth in his eyes that invited trust. "Yes," she said softly, "we are just passing through. My name is Leela." Jack knelt slightly so he could meet her at eye level. "I'm Jack," he said, "and this is my little corner of the world. Want to see something fun?" Leela's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Yes," she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. Jack led her around the store, showing her small trinkets, toys, and jars filled with colorful candies. Leela's laughter rang through the air, blending with the sounds of the town and making Jack smile in a way he hadn't smiled in a long time. As the afternoon passed, Jack and Leela found themselves outside, exploring the hills just beyond the town. Jack rode his horse with ease, guiding Leela through the grassy slopes, pointing out wildflowers and teaching her how to balance on a fence post. She was fearless, her small hands gripping the rails tightly as she laughed and squealed with delight. The two became fast friends, their bond growing stronger with every shared story and every playful adventure. At one point, they reached the top of a hill overlooking the town. The view was breathtaking. The town's wooden buildings glowed in the golden sunlight, smoke rising gently from chimneys, and the river nearby sparkled as it reflected the sky. Leela stood quietly, taking in the scene, and Jack noticed the thoughtful expression on her face. He nudged her gently with his shoulder and said jokingly, "You know, when you grow up, I'm going to marry you." Leela blinked in surprise, then giggled. "You?" she asked, clearly amused. "You're funny," Jack laughed, ruffling her hair. "I'm serious," he said with a playful wink, "but only if you don't run away when you grow taller than me." Leela laughed again, a sound as bright as the summer sky. She didn't fully understand what marriage meant yet, but the words felt like a promise, something magical that belonged to this sunny afternoon and the adventure they shared. They continued to play, chase butterflies, and tell stories until the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. As evening approached, Leela's family prepared to leave the town. She looked at Jack with a mixture of sadness and excitement. "Will I see you again?" she asked softly. Jack smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his own eyes. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'll remember this summer, and who knows? Maybe one day we'll meet again." Leela nodded, feeling the weight of his words more than she could explain. The two shared a brief hug before she was led away by her family, disappearing into the dusty road that stretched beyond the town. After she left, Jack stood on the hill, watching the road until it vanished from sight. The memory of her laughter and sparkling eyes stayed with him, warming him like the last rays of the setting sun. He knew that he had met someone special, someone who had left a mark on his heart, even though she was just a little girl at the time. That summer afternoon had been filled with innocence, adventure, and the beginnings of a connection that neither of them could have predicted. For Leela, the memory of Jack's joke stayed with her as well. She remembered the way he had laughed, the gentle way he had shown her the hills, and the kindness in his eyes. It became a story she carried with her as she grew, one of friendship, trust, and a sense of wonder about the world beyond her village. She would often think about that cowboy with the warm smile and playful words, imagining the adventures he might have experienced as he rode across the hills and worked in the town. As the seasons changed and Leela's family moved on, life returned to its normal rhythm in the small town. Jack continued his work, helping at the store, riding his horse, and interacting with the townsfolk, but he often found himself glancing down the dusty road, hoping for a glimpse of the little girl who had brightened his summer. Though life was busy, and many other events filled his days, that memory remained, a reminder of a fleeting, joyful moment that had been entirely unexpected yet entirely meaningful. This summer, filled with laughter, playful promises, and shared adventures, marked the beginning of a story that neither Jack nor Leela could yet fully understand. It was a story of friendship, innocence, and the subtle weaving of fate. They were two young souls who had crossed paths at exactly the right time, leaving an imprint on each other's hearts that would last long after the summer had ended. Even as they grew older, with new experiences and challenges shaping their lives, the memory of that summer remained clear. Jack remembered the little Apache girl with her fearless laughter, her curious eyes, and the moment he had jokingly promised to marry her. Leela remembered the young cowboy who had treated her with kindness and respect, who had shared adventures and laughter that made her feel seen and special. That memory became a seed, planted in both their hearts, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. And so the story of Jack and Leela began, not with grand events or dramatic twists, but with a simple summer afternoon, a playful promise, and the bond of two children who had found friendship and joy in each other's company. That small beginning held within it the magic of possibility, the promise of fate, and the quiet truth that sometimes, the most unforgettable stories start in the most ordinary moments. After that unforgettable summer, life moved on for both Jack and Leela. For Jack, the dusty streets of the small frontier town remained busy, full of people, horses, and endless chores. The general store where he worked was always bustling with customers, from ranchers buying feed to travelers looking for supplies. Jack had grown taller and stronger over the years, his face tanned from long hours under the sun, and his hands calloused from work with horses and wagons. He had become known in the town for his skill with the lasso, his bravery during difficult tasks, and above all, his kind and friendly nature. People often said that Jack was a good man, someone they could trust, and someone who carried himself with quiet confidence. Yet despite his busy life, Jack could never forget the little girl with dark, shining eyes who had captured his attention that summer. Sometimes, when he was alone, he would think back to that afternoon on the hill, her laughter echoing in his memory. He remembered the playful promise he had made, the words that had seemed like a joke at the time, and yet had somehow felt important in a strange, mysterious way. Though many years had passed, the memory lingered, soft but persistent, like a gentle wind that never entirely faded. Meanwhile, Leela was growing up with her family in their Apache community. Her days were filled with learning the ways of her people, listening to elders tell stories of courage and wisdom, and helping her family with daily tasks. She learned how to track animals, gather herbs, and respect the land that had been cared for by generations before her. Leela's childhood was full of lessons, both practical and spiritual, but she never forgot the summer she had spent in the small town, nor the young cowboy who had shown her kindness and adventure. She remembered his smile, his playful joke, and the freedom she had felt riding on the hills with him. That memory became a quiet treasure she held in her heart, one she often revisited whenever she thought about what lay beyond her community. As the years went by, both Jack and Leela experienced the ordinary challenges of growing up. Jack faced hard work, long days, and the responsibility of becoming a man in a town where survival often depended on skill, courage and wisdom. He learned to care for horses, mend fences, and help his neighbors. He also encountered the joys of friendship and community, festivals in the town square, dances under the open sky, and evenings spent around the fire sharing stories with friends. Yet through it all, the memory of Leela remained with him, a small but persistent spark in his heart. For Leela, life was no less busy or challenging. She was learning the importance of her culture, the values her family cherished, and the responsibilities that came with growing older. Yet even in her most ordinary moments, walking through the fields, helping her mother cook, or listening to the elders' stories, she often thought about the young cowboy. She wondered if he had grown into the man she imagined, whether he still remembered her, and if the playful promise he had made that summer meant anything at all now that years had passed. Though she focused on her life, her training, and her family, there was always a small curiosity about what had become of Jack, the boy who had left such an impression on her young heart. Time moved quickly in these frontier years. Seasons changed, and with each passing year, both Jack and Leela experienced growth, joy, and some sadness. Jack faced the passing of friends, the challenges of surviving harsh winters, and the occasional struggle to keep the store running smoothly. Yet he also enjoyed moments of adventure, riding through the hills, exploring the lands beyond the town, and helping neighbors with urgent needs. Each experience added to his understanding of the world, his skills, and his character, shaping him into a young man who was strong, dependable, and kind-hearted. Leela's years were filled with similar experiences, though they came in a different form. She learned to ride horses skillfully, to help her community prepare for festivals, and to contribute to family life with care and responsibility. She also discovered her own strengths, bravery, determination, and a deep sense of loyalty to her family and people. And yet, amid all of this, the memory of that summer and the cowboy she had met continued to sparkle like a hidden gem. It reminded her that the world beyond her village was wide, full of possibilities, and that connections formed in childhood could sometimes echo into the future in unexpected ways. Both Jack and Leela began to grow not only in age but in understanding. Jack started thinking about life differently, about friendships, respect, and the importance of treating people with kindness. Leela also began to think about relationships, trust, and the feeling of being seen and valued by someone outside her family. Though they were apart, the foundation of their connection, the friendship and playful bond formed in their youth, continued to shape them in ways they did not fully realize. Despite the distance, Jack sometimes imagined what Leela might be like now. He wondered if she had grown into a strong, confident young woman, if her eyes still shone with curiosity, and if she remembered the hills, the laughter, and the playful promise he had made. Sometimes, late at night, he would find himself smiling at the thought, feeling a warmth in his chest that was both comforting and mysterious. He didn't know if he would ever see her again, but the memory stayed alive, a quiet whisper of the past that had the power to touch his heart even years later. Leela, too, carried these thoughts. She sometimes imagined what Jack might have become, whether he was still the same kind, adventurous boy, or whether life had changed him into someone entirely different. She wondered if he still remembered her, if the summer had left as strong an impression on him as it had on her. These thoughts did not dominate her life, but they lingered quietly, a gentle curiosity that occasionally brought a smile to her face. It was a connection rooted in innocence and joy, yet full of promise and the subtle power of memory. As the years passed, the world around them also changed. The small town grew busier, with new families arriving and new shops opening. Leela's community expanded and moved closer to the town, bringing her occasionally near the places where Jack spent his days. Each encounter, even from a distance, reminded her of the time they had shared, the playful joke, and the warmth of their childhood bond. Jack, too, noticed new faces in the town, yet none captured his attention in the same way. His thoughts often drifted back to that summer, to the little girl who had taught him joy, laughter, and the beauty of simple moments. Both of them, in their separate lives, began to understand something important. The memory of childhood connections, the friendships and bonds formed when the world feels large and full of wonder, can carry weight far beyond the years. Jack and Leela had shared something that summer, something pure, joyful, and meaningful. And though time had placed miles between them, that bond remained, quietly influencing their lives and shaping the people they were becoming. By the time Leela reached her late teens, she was not only skilled and confident, but also aware of the world beyond her village. She felt ready to explore, to meet new people, and to see if the memory of her summer with Jack could become more than just a story she held in her heart. Jack, similarly, had matured into a man who had experienced much of life, but he still carried the sense of wonder, the warmth, and the playful spirit that had first drawn him to Leela. Both were now ready, though neither knew it yet, for the next chapter of their story, the chapter that would bring them back together in ways they could not yet imagine. The years of separation had been long, but they had also been meaningful. They shaped Jack and Leela into individuals capable of understanding and appreciating the depth of connection they had once shared as children. They had grown in skill, character, and perspective, all the while holding on to a memory that had never faded. And though neither of them knew it at the time, the playful words spoken on that summer afternoon, the joke about marriage, would one day take on a new and profound significance, leading them toward a reunion that life had quietly prepared for over many years. Thus, the story of Jack and Leela continued, not with immediate action, but with the slow and steady shaping of two lives, influenced by a fleeting summer of friendship, laughter, and promise. It was a story of growth, memory, and the invisible threads of fate that connect people across time and distance. And in the quiet moments, when Jack rode his horse across the hills and Leela walked through the fields of her community, both felt, in ways they could not fully explain, that something important had begun long ago, waiting patiently for the moment when their paths would cross. Again, years had passed since that unforgettable summer. Jack had grown into a young man, strong and respected in his town, while Leela had matured into a confident, intelligent, and graceful young woman. Life had moved on for both of them, shaping their experiences, dreams, and character. Yet the memory of each other, the playful summer, the laughter, the hills, and that small, joking promise, never faded. It had become a quiet, invisible thread connecting their lives across time and distance, though neither fully realized it yet. One warm morning, the town stirred with excitement. A small group of travelers had arrived, bringing news that drew the attention of many townsfolk. Among the newcomers was a young woman whose presence immediately caught Jack's eye. She moved with quiet confidence, her dark hair flowing behind her as she walked, her eyes scanning the bustling streets with curiosity and a subtle strength. There was something familiar about her, something in the way she carried herself, a spark of life and energy that stirred memories long kept in the back of his mind. Jack found himself drawn to her, curiosity and recognition battling with disbelief. Could it really be? He studied her carefully from a distance, noticing the grace in her movements, the warmth in her smile, and the bright, intelligent eyes that reminded him so strongly of the little girl he had met years ago. The townspeople whispered among themselves, noticing the newcomer, commenting on her beauty, confidence, and poise. But Jack's attention was focused entirely on the possibility that this young woman could be Leela, the girl who had changed his summer long ago. Meanwhile, Leela was equally aware of the town she had entered. Everything seemed familiar yet different: the dusty streets, the wooden buildings, the sounds of the horses and wagons, and the general hum of daily life. As she walked through the town, she caught sight of a young man in the distance, strong and confident, yet with the same warmth in his eyes that she remembered from her childhood. Recognition flashed immediately, like lightning striking across time. Could it really be him? Her heart beat faster, a mix of excitement, nerves, and curiosity swirling within her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm, but the memory of that summer, the laughter, the adventures, and the playful promise, was vivid in her mind. Jack noticed her approach, his heart racing in disbelief and anticipation. The years had changed them both, yet something essential had remained, the bond that had started as a simple friendship, a playful connection, and a shared sense of adventure. As Leela drew nearer, he could see the recognition in her eyes, and a smile slowly spread across his face. "Leela," he said softly, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the moment. Leela's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Jack," she replied, her voice steady yet full of emotion. For a few moments, neither spoke. They simply looked at each other, the years of separation melting away, leaving only the memory of a joyful summer and the curiosity about what had become of each other over the years. It was as if time had paused, allowing them to reconnect in a moment that felt both fleeting and eternal. Finally, Jack broke the silence with a laugh, tinged with disbelief and joy. "I can't believe it, you're really here. I never thought I'd see you again." Leela's eyes sparkled as she responded. "Neither did I, but I've always remembered that summer and the joke you made." Jack chuckled, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "Ah, that old thing. I thought it was just a silly promise. But I guess maybe it wasn't so silly after all." The two began to walk through the town together, catching up on the years they had missed. Leela told Jack about her family, the traditions she had learned, and the adventures she had experienced since leaving the town as a child. Jack shared stories of his life in the town, the work he had done, the people he had met, and the changes he had seen over the years. With each story, each laugh, and each memory shared, they felt the bond between them grow stronger, transforming from childhood friendship into something deeper, more meaningful and full of potential. As the day progressed, they found themselves at the old hill overlooking the town, the very place where Jack had once made his playful promise. The view was as breathtaking as it had been years ago, the town stretching below them with its familiar streets, the river glinting in the sunlight, and the hills standing tall in the distance. Leela stood quietly, taking it all in, while Jack watched her, remembering the little girl who had once stood in the same spot, full of curiosity and wonder. Finally, Leela spoke, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "You remember what you said that day, don't you?" she asked, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Jack's heart skipped a beat. I remember," he admitted, his voice a mixture of amusement, nostalgia, and seriousness. "I never thought you'd take it seriously, but seeing you now, I wonder if maybe it wasn't just a joke after all." Leela laughed gently, the sound echoing across the hills, carrying with it the innocence and joy of their shared past. "Maybe it wasn't," she replied, her eyes locking with his in a gaze that held both memories and possibilities. In the days that followed, Jack and Leela spent more time together, rediscovering the connection that had begun years before. They walked through the town, explored the hills, shared meals, and told stories late into the evenings. Each conversation, each shared smile, and each gentle touch reminded them of the bond that had been planted in their childhood, a bond that had grown quietly over the years, waiting for the right moment to blossom. The townspeople began to notice the change. They saw the way Jack's eyes softened when he looked at Leela, the way she smiled with a quiet happiness when he was near. Whispers circulated about the young woman who had returned to the town and the cowboy who seemed to have found joy again in her presence. Yet for Jack and Leela, the world outside faded into the background. What mattered most was the connection they had rekindled, the understanding that their friendship had transformed into something more profound, built on years of memories, growth, and mutual respect. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Jack and Leela sat quietly on a hill, watching the town below. Leela leaned slightly on Jack's shoulder, a comfortable silence between them that spoke volumes. "It feels like no time has passed," she said softly. Jack smiled, his hand gently brushing hers. "It does, and yet we've grown so much. All those years, all those experiences, they brought us here." In that quiet moment, both realized that the playful joke of their childhood had become something far more meaningful. The promise, once lighthearted and whimsical, now carried weight and emotion. They understood that life had guided them back to each other, that the bond formed in their youth had endured the tests of time, distance, and change. What had once been a fleeting connection had now grown into a foundation for love, trust, and shared dreams. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened. Jack and Leela learned more about each other's strengths, fears, and aspirations. They laughed, shared stories, and even faced small challenges together, discovering how much they complemented and supported each other. Every moment spent together strengthened the bond they had rediscovered, and each day brought a deeper understanding of the connection that had begun so many years ago. The turning point came one bright morning when Leela invited Jack to her family's home. There he met her parents and elders, who welcomed him warmly and shared stories of Leela's upbringing, her courage, and her wisdom. Jack realized how much Leela had grown, how her experiences had shaped her into a remarkable woman, and how fortunate he was to have her back in his life. Leela, in turn, saw the man Jack had become, responsible, kind, and full of integrity, and understood why the memory of their summer together had stayed alive in her heart. By the time their days together had stretched into weeks, the playful joke of their childhood had transformed into a serious, heartfelt connection. Jack and Leela both understood that this was not merely nostalgia or a fleeting memory. It was fate, patience, and a bond that had grown stronger with time. The summer that had brought them together as children had laid the foundation, and life had guided them back to each other at the perfect moment. And so, as the hills glowed in the fading light of another sunset, Jack and Leela stood together, hand in hand, knowing that what had begun as a childhood friendship and a playful promise had now become the beginning of something lasting, meaningful, and true. The past, the memories, and the years apart had all led to this moment, a reunion that neither of them could have predicted, yet both had quietly hoped for all along. After their reunion, Jack and Leela's lives became closely intertwined. Every day brought new opportunities for them to learn about each other and grow together. What had started as childhood curiosity and a playful joke had now blossomed into a deep, emotional connection. Jack discovered the depth of Leela's intelligence, her understanding of life, and her quiet strength, while Leela saw the kind heart, courage, and steadfast character that made Jack a man she could trust and admire. Despite the warmth of their growing bond, life was not without challenges. Leela's family had their own concerns and responsibilities. They wanted to ensure that she was making choices that honored her heritage and traditions. They watched Jack closely, studying him not only as the young cowboy he was, but as a man who had matured over the years. Jack understood this completely. He knew that winning the trust and respect of Leela's family was as important as nurturing the bond between them. He approached each interaction with patience, humility, and a sincere willingness to understand and respect the values that shaped Leela's life. At the same time, Jack and Leela had to navigate their own emotions. After years apart, the intensity of their feelings was sometimes overwhelming. They would spend hours walking through the hills, talking about dreams, fears, and memories, but even in moments of quiet companionship, there was a tension, a mix of anticipation and hesitation. They both knew the weight of what they were feeling, but neither wanted to rush, fearing that hurried decisions might spoil the authenticity of the bond they had rediscovered. One afternoon, as the sun poured golden light over the hills, Jack took Leela to a quiet meadow. Wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze, and the distant sound of a river added a calm, soothing rhythm to the scene. Jack stopped and turned to Leela, searching her eyes. "Leela," he said softly, "I need you to know something. These past few weeks, being with you again, it feels like coming home. You've always been in my heart, and I think I love you." Leela's eyes glistened with emotion. She reached for his hand, her voice trembling slightly. "Jack, I've felt the same way. I have for a long time, even when I didn't fully understand it. Being with you now, it feels right. It feels like we were meant to find each other again." The realization of their mutual feelings brought a sense of joy, relief, and clarity. Yet with this clarity came the responsibility of deciding their future together. Leela's family, her community, and the traditions they valued could not be ignored. Jack knew he had to prove himself worthy, not just as a partner, but as someone who could honor the life and heritage Leela cherished. This was no longer a playful childhood promise. This was real life, with real consequences, expectations, and emotions. Over the following weeks, Jack immersed himself in Leela's world. He learned more about her community, their customs, and their ways of life. He listened attentively to the stories of elders, asked questions, and observed the traditions with respect. Slowly, he began to earn the trust of Leela's family. They saw that his intentions were sincere, that his feelings for Leela were genuine, and that he possessed the character and strength necessary to be a supportive partner. Leela watched all of this, her admiration for Jack growing as she saw him engage with her world with humility, respect, and an open heart. Even with these positive steps, Jack and Leela faced moments of doubt and insecurity. There were evenings when Leela wondered if life might pull them apart again, when she questioned whether the past could truly lead to a stable future. Jack, too, felt the weight of responsibility. He wanted to protect Leela, honor her family, and ensure that their relationship was built on a solid foundation. They leaned on each other during these times, sharing honest conversations, holding hands through quiet moments, and reminding one another of the strength of their bond. One particularly challenging moment came when Leela's father spoke to Jack privately. "I have watched you closely," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I see that you care for my daughter, but love alone is not enough. You must prove that you are ready to face challenges to protect her and to honor the traditions of our people." Jack nodded earnestly. "I understand. I promise I will do everything I can to prove myself worthy. I don't just love her. I respect her, her family, and everything that has shaped her." Leela's father studied him for a moment, then gave a slight nod, a gesture of cautious approval. It was not the end of the journey, but it was a sign that trust was beginning to form, brick by brick. As Jack continued to integrate into Leela's world, their bond deepened in meaningful ways. They worked together in the fields, prepared meals, and participated in community events. Leela taught Jack the skills she had learned over the years, and he shared his own knowledge of the town, horses, and survival skills. Through shared work and experiences, they grew closer, understanding each other's strengths, weaknesses, and values. The partnership that had begun in childhood had transformed into a mature, mutual respect and love that could weather difficulties and celebrate joys alike. In quiet moments, Jack and Leela would revisit the memories of their childhood summer. They laughed about the hills, the games, and the playful promise that had set everything in motion. Yet they also reflected on the journey that had brought them back together, the years apart, the growth, the challenges, and the lessons learned. Each memory was a reminder of how far they had come and how much they had both changed, shaping them into the people they were now, ready for a shared future. As their relationship strengthened, Jack and Leela began discussing the future more seriously. They spoke about marriage, family, and the life they hoped to build together. There was no rush, but both knew that their love was strong enough to endure any challenge. They imagined a life where they could blend their worlds, the cowboy town and the Apache community, creating a life rooted in respect, love, and shared dreams. These conversations, though sometimes serious, were also filled with hope, laughter, and the excitement of possibilities. Through these experiences, both Jack and Leela came to understand the true meaning of love. It was not just affection or attraction. It was patience, respect, shared effort, and a willingness to face challenges together. They realized that love was about understanding each other's pasts, honoring each other's experiences, and supporting one another in building a future. Their connection, forged in childhood and tempered by years of growth and distance, had matured into a love that was both deep and enduring. By the end of the season, Jack and Leela had achieved a sense of harmony in their relationship. They had faced doubts, navigated expectations, and integrated their lives with care and thoughtfulness. What had started as a playful joke in childhood had transformed into a genuine partnership built on trust, respect, and shared history. The challenges they had faced together had strengthened their bond, proving that their love was not fleeting but rooted in understanding, resilience, and devotion. As the sun set on another warm evening, Jack and Leela sat quietly on the familiar hill overlooking the town. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of a river flowing gently. They held hands, feeling the weight and significance of all they had experienced together. "We've come a long way," Leela whispered, resting her head on Jack's shoulder. Jack nodded, his heart full. "Yes, and we're just beginning. This is our time now." In that moment, they understood that their journey, though long and filled with challenges, had prepared them for the life they were about to share. A life built on love, trust, and the enduring bond of childhood friendship that had blossomed into true, lifelong love. The day Jack and Leela had both quietly awaited for so many years had finally arrived. Their love, which had grown from a playful childhood promise into a deep and enduring bond, was now ready to take the next step. The town and Leela's community had been buzzing with anticipation for weeks, as friends, neighbors, and family prepared for the wedding. Jack felt a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and gratitude. After all the years apart, the challenges they had faced, and the growth they had achieved individually and together, this moment felt like the culmination of a long and beautiful journey. Early that morning, Jack rose before the sun, feeling the cool breeze on his face as he prepared himself. He cleaned his boots, polished his hat, and checked the small decorations he had arranged in front of the old chapel at the edge of town. Every detail mattered, not because he wanted to impress anyone, but because he wanted everything to reflect the significance of the day. This was not just a wedding. It was a celebration of their journey, their love, and the way life had brought them back together. Meanwhile, Leela was preparing with her family in a small, sunlit room filled with laughter, quiet excitement, and the occasional nervous sigh. Her dress, simple yet elegant, reflected both her personal style and the heritage she cherished. Her hair was carefully braided, a symbol of her traditions, while small wildflowers were woven through, echoing the hills where she and Jack had first shared their adventures. As she looked at herself in the mirror, Leela felt a mixture of emotions, joy, nostalgia, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the path that had led her here. She thought of the playful summer years ago, of the little cowboy who had promised to marry her, and of the journey that had brought them back together as two grown individuals ready to share their lives. The ceremony began in the late morning, under a clear blue sky. Friends and family from both communities gathered, filling the wooden benches with smiling faces. The gentle sound of a river nearby added a peaceful rhythm to the scene, while the hills in the distance seemed to watch over the celebration. Jack stood at the front, his heart racing as he waited for Leela's arrival. He felt the years, the memories, and the challenges they had overcome all converge in that moment. This was the day when the playful words of childhood had transformed into a promise for a lifetime. Leela approached slowly, accompanied by her family, each step carrying confidence, grace, and the weight of the journey she had undertaken. When their eyes met, the world seemed to pause. Jack smiled, a mixture of awe and happiness shining in his eyes. Leela's smile mirrored his, warm, gentle, and full of the unspoken emotions that had grown between them over the years. Every step she took seemed to strengthen the bond that had already survived time, distance, and change. The ceremony itself was heartfelt and simple, reflecting both the traditions of Leela's heritage and the frontier town's charm. Words were spoken about love, respect, and partnership, reminding everyone present of the strength of bonds built on trust and understanding. Jack and Leela exchanged vows that were personal, honest, and filled with emotion. Jack spoke of the playful summer promise, of the years he had carried the memory of Leela in his heart, and of the joy he now felt in finally being able to honor that bond. Leela spoke of her memories, her growth, and her deep affection for Jack, acknowledging the journey that had prepared them for this day. As they exchanged rings, the symbol of their commitment, a quiet cheer rose from the guests. It was more than a wedding. It was a celebration of destiny, patience, and the enduring power of true connection. Jack and Leela's hands met, fingers intertwining naturally as if they had been made to fit together all along. In that moment, the past, the present, and the future converged. The playful joke that had begun their story had grown into a lifelong commitment, honored not only by themselves, but by all who had witnessed their journey. After the ceremony, the celebrations moved to an open meadow, a place filled with wildflowers and gentle sunlight. Tables were decorated with simple yet elegant arrangements, and the air was filled with laughter, music, and the joyful sounds of children playing nearby. Friends and family from both the town and Leela's community mingled, sharing stories, dancing, and celebrating the union of two people who had waited years to find each other. The connection between the communities was strengthened, and the love that Jack and Leela shared became a symbol of harmony, respect, and the beauty of enduring relationships. During the festivities, Jack and Leela found a quiet moment to themselves. They walked to a small hill overlooking the meadow, the same hills where they had first shared adventures so many years ago. Standing together, hand in hand, they reflected on their journey, the playful joke of childhood, the years apart, the challenges they had faced, and the love that had survived it all. Leela rested her head on Jack's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, feeling the warmth and reassurance of her presence. "I can't believe this is real," Leela whispered. Jack smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "It is real. We waited, we grew, and now we have each other. Nothing can change that." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold, Jack and Leela felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. The memories of their childhood summer, the playful promise, and the years of growth had led them to this perfect moment. They understood that love was not just about feelings. It was about patience, trust, respect, and shared experiences. Their story had become a testament to the power of enduring connections, the magic of fate, and the beauty of allowing life to unfold at its own pace. The night was filled with laughter, dancing, and stories shared by friends and family. Jack and Leela moved together, their movements in sync, reflecting the harmony of their hearts. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the love that had grown over years and distance. Each smile, each shared glance, and each moment of quiet togetherness reinforced the understanding that they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, committed, and ready to face life's future hand in hand. In the weeks following their wedding, Jack and Leela settled into a life together that blended their worlds. They worked alongside each other, shared responsibilities, and continued to honor both their backgrounds, the frontier town's rugged simplicity and the Apache community's traditions and wisdom. Their home became a place of warmth, laughter, and love, a reflection of the journey they had taken and the lives they had built together. Friends and family continued to visit, sharing in the joys of the couple's happiness and offering support and guidance when needed. Jack often reflected on how far they had come. The playful joke he had made when Leela was a little girl had seemed insignificant at the time, yet it had set in motion a journey that had led them to this moment of joy and fulfillment. Leela, too, thought often about the young cowboy who had laughed and promised marriage so many years ago. She marveled at how life had honored a memory, how patience and faith had brought them together, and how the bond they had formed as children had grown into a love strong enough to last a lifetime. Together, Jack and Leela faced the future with hope, confidence, and mutual respect. Their marriage was more than a union of two hearts. It was a testament to the enduring power of childhood connections, the beauty of destiny, and the importance of waiting for the right time. They knew that challenges would come, but they also knew that their love, built on years of growth, shared experiences, and mutual understanding, would help them overcome anything. As they sat on their porch one evening, watching the sun set over the hills and the town they both loved, Jack turned to Leela and said softly, "Do you remember that summer? The joke I made?" Leela laughed gently, resting her head against his chest. "I do." "And look where it brought us." Jack smiled, feeling a quiet gratitude in his heart. "Yes. It brought us here, together, stronger and ready for anything." Leela smiled back, squeezing his hand, and together they watched the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, knowing that their story, once a playful childhood memory, had become a lifelong journey of love, commitment, and happiness. And so, Jack and Leela's story came full circle. From a chance summer friendship to years apart, from playful promises to serious commitment, they had found their way back to each other. Their marriage was not just an ending, but the beginning of a shared life, filled with laughter, adventure, respect, and deep love. The little girl and the young cowboy had grown, faced life's challenges, and returned to one another, proving that sometimes the promises made in innocence can carry the weight of destiny, and that love, when patient and true, can endure anything.